1800s, a railroad worker named Phineas Gage was injured by a steel rod that passed through his eye socket into his brain. Even though Gage made a remarkable recovery, his entire personality changed. From a calm and funny person, he transformed into someone who was ill-tempered and used foul language. This is one of the most famous cases in psychology because it helped us establish that our personality does indeed have a biological component right here in our brains. While experiments and other methods are usually used to better understand commonly occurring behaviors and attitudes, there are some unique or less common phenomena which may occur over longer periods of time and also need attention from psychologists. Studying these less common behaviors, attitudes, and disorders can help us find solutions and also help us understand, of course, those specific rare cases, but then we can use that information to think of the human experience in new ways, just like the curious case of Phineas Gage did. So let's begin by understanding what cases or case studies are. The case study method is an in-depth, detailed investigation of one individual or a small group. Usually, a case study that involves a single person or individual will investigate a very specific disorder or medical condition. And on the other hand, when we talk about a group case study or a case study involving a group, you will study a subculture to understand what the unique motivations are behind that group mindset, behavior, or attitudes. Because case studies are so detail-oriented, psychologists who are using this method will include biographical details, like the life history of the person or people in the group, as well as behaviors and experiences of interest that the person or group being studied share and are observed by the researcher. Now, this history, this context, gives the researcher invaluable ways to think about what they are studying. Similarly, explanations of behavior seen in a case study are outlined in qualitative ways. This means that they are drawn from very detailed descriptions of what an individual reports to think or feel or behave, and these detailed descriptions are not usually numerical. And this level of detail, qualitative detail, is what is so unique about the case method. And we will talk more about this in my lesson on evaluating case studies. Remember that like other methods, the case method can also involve different method within that same case study. For example, an experiment may be conducted within the detailed case examination of a person or group. And related to this, you should also remember that data collected in case studies is primarily qualitative because a lot of it is conducted using interviews. But when other methods like surveys or experimental techniques are also used, then quantitative or numerical data will supplement the qualitative findings.
Quick pause. If you're finding value in this explanation, there's so much more to discover at Alt Academy, where we break down every A-level concept with the same clarity. Now back to the video lesson.
This is a good time to clarify some of the basic differences between case studies and experiments. So case studies will aim to understand, describe, or explore a particular phenomena, the unique characteristics of an individual, a group, or an event. This is different from experiments because experiments are designed to test hypotheses and to establish cause and effect relationships between variables by comparing experimental groups and control groups. Typically, case studies are conducted over a longer period of time as compared to experiments, and they include a smaller sample. The Saavedra and Silverman study, for instance, is what we call a longitudinal case because it went on for over 12 months. But a case study can also be conducted over a short period of time, like a week or maybe even a day, in which it provides extremely detailed data of a snapshot in time. And this kind of study is called a cross-sectional study. So remember, longitudinal studies take place over long periods of time, while cases that are studied for shorter durations are called cross-sectional. Now, speaking of Saavedra and Silverman, do you think that that study was an example of a case method combined with nothing else? Well, no. Researchers have combined the case method with self-reports, and a somewhat experimental technique. But remember, Saavedra and Silverman is not a pure experiment because they were not testing a hypothesis or a cause-effect relationship. What I mean is that they tried different types of therapies or treatments for the phobia to see what works, and they used interviews and questionnaires to check how effective each method was in combination with observations, which helped them understand the phobia and how best to treat it. The experimentation with the different therapies allowed Saavedra and Silverman to test different treatments, but while details collected through case method provide a lot of qualitative explanations, and those have shed more light into the treatment of phobias as a whole. Saavedra and Silverman is an example of a case involving an individual, but case studies can involve groups as well. One example is that of Anne Laura Wainwright, who spent 4 years studying how communities in rural China faced pollution that seriously harmed their health. Her focus was on understanding how these people reacted when they were aware that pollution posed a significant cancer risk. And through her in-depth research, in-depth case, she was able to examine how they came together in their concerns, engaged in protests, and went about their daily lives while they were dealing with this polluted water. Without the case method, understanding this daily lived experience would not have been possible. Even only using self-reports had certain limitations because the participants would only provide answers to what they were asked about, which means that the researcher would have missed certain details. So by observation over a long period of time, those details did not get missed. Just remember, these kinds of cases, group cases, are not very common in psychology. And at the A level, you will predominantly look at individual studies, and you only have Saavedra and Silverman's case in the A level. So now that you know what a case study is, the next lessons will talk about how it's used as well as the strengths and limitations of the method, which will help you evaluate studies where the case method has been used, like Saavedra and Silverman's study. So now let's jump to our next lesson.
Hey there! If you found this A-level psychology lesson helpful, why don't you head on over to altacademy.org, where you can sign up for the full A-level psychology course. In addition to psychology, we offered 7 other A-level subjects. Thousands of students have already taken the leap. What are you waiting for? I want to see you there.